Hi everyone, Internet PCS book reader here. Today I want to talk about Your Utopia by Bora Chung. Bora Chung is the author of Course Bunny that I've reviewed, and Anton Her is the translator of almost any books from Korea, as where everywhere I look, there he is. Anyway, just like Curse Bunny, Your Utopia is a short story where it is telling an uncanny kind of story. You've probably heard of uncanny used in Uncanny Valley, which is used in technology usually, where a machine is trying to look like human, but failed in doing so. The term works in the same way in literature, where the characters are acting, let's just say, mostly human. And as a result, it gives off this uncomfortable feeling that something is not right. Because it's a collection of short stories, I'll try to describe them while also giving each of them some sort of individual scoring, and then as usual, I'll just hit you with the overall score of the book. The first story is the Center of Immortality Research, which studied how people approach immortality. For example, Xin Huang with his mercury poisoning. But immortality did not have anything to do with it. We follow a middle management in the company, the ones that is stuck between the higher-ups and no one below her position. If you ever worked at an office long enough or you are currently working at an office, this chapter will most likely give you some traumatic flashback. Two events happen at the same time to our main character. The first one is that there is a big company anniversary that is coming up soon for his 98th birthday since it was founded in 1912. They didn't choose 95 or 100 for the big celebration because this is just one of those companies that is not like the other girls. One of the jobs he had was to try to invite some random artist that once played a role as an immortal, but she cannot get through even the manager of the artist before she was stonewalled. The second event that is happening at the same time is that there is a politician that seems to be stalking one of her colleagues. Because the colleague is above her position, she's the one that had to deal with the weirdo, especially when he suddenly just show up into the office to ask to meet her colleague since they're supposedly once used to be childhood friends. This is a weird politician, which I guess is a redundant statement since all politicians are weirdos. He kept saying words that he made up himself, like tortified and about Russian ancestor resurrections, a bunch of nonsense, which confuses our main character, so she blurted out that her colleague is busy with the upcoming anniversary and is still trying to contact a certain celebrity. Surprisingly, the politician is the one that helps resolve the celebrity thing by contacting and maybe also confusing the manager of the artist with Talktify. Then we go through series of really dumb tests in the office, especially with mails that goes through the upper echelons first before being released to the clients. Things like changing word in the draft mail from invite to invitation. That takes multiple going back and forth that takes minutes between each back and forth. It's one of the dumbest things that you will encounter at the office if you have a bad manager who loves to power trip from asking someone to do something when they can just change the word themselves easily before returning the mail back. Going through the hire third-party designer is also a mess because of this, especially when the designer was not paid enough to work until late for sudden changes that meant nothing. But the anniversary do finally happen, and both artist B and the weird Starker politician comes. There's also a really beautiful guest lecturer they invited. The party turned into a mess. Our main character had to have her boss told the limited edition DVD her other boss have, while downstairs, the pretty guest lecturer boyfriend comes in attacking with Fabrice, demanding to see his girlfriend. But despite all of that, they go back to business as usual after the party, because here's the twist. Our main character is actually immortal. So does everyone that work in the Center of Immortality Research. Because their existence is so tied up together to stay hidden while making a living, they will almost likely have to work there forever. Our main character will most likely forever, for decades, centuries, and more, work as the middle management without any change in her work. 9 to 5 job itself is already an existential crisis. Imagine having to do them for the rest of your life if your life was forever. The idea is horrifying, but in the story it does come out a bit unnatural, like, surprise, we're all actually immortal. It helps that this is a dark comedy, so the surprise doesn't give too much backlash from a tonal shift. I give this a 3. Then the second story, The End of Voyage, is where our main character has left the Earth. What caused this is because how ruined the Earth was. One day suddenly there's a disease, the story just called The Disease with capital D. It's basically a zombie-like disease where people started eating each other. What makes this different than the usual zombie disease is that you cannot tell the difference between the zombie and regular people at all. A family might have an outing, watching some cinema, Dune 2 maybe, and then in the middle of the movie suddenly started eating each other. So on the last leg, every government decided to send some people that they are sure is uninfected into outer space. both to survive and to study or find a cure for the disease. Our nameless main character is someone whose main job is to communicate with Earth, but no one else on the ship can know about it except for the captain. So the only friends he had on board was a mechanic. They went into space for a long while until disagreements started happening about the disease, and then some people started to turn into cannibals in space. The disease snuck in, and what's left of humanity started eating each other. This is one of those stories that really feels like you can read more into them. The first one is the same, but the second story is even more so. It's unfortunate that some aspect of the story really feels like it's being rushed because it's a short story, but the concept of the story and how the ending changes how you read the story is amazing. I hope the author went back to the story and make it into a full novel length or someone make an adaptation of it, which I highly doubt because cannibals with zombies still being human might be too much for TV even though it's scarier than just a regular brainless zombie. I give this a 3.5. Then we move to a very ordinary marriage. A very ordinary husband was in the middle of his marital problem and he suspected that his wife is cheating because she's having a lot of phone calls. He said that she's a person that often is on call even before their marriage, so the calls itself is not really that weird, but since the story is through his perspective, I guess let's hear him out. One day on one of his night out drinking, he got sick enough to puke his guts out. He managed to get to the hospital and get home safely, but his wife was often missing during this time. She went on a call at random times and random place and using a language he's not familiar with during the call. He thought it was because she was having an affair with a foreigner. He tried to get into her phone and somehow got the number of the man she was calling. So he called him, which didn't really end up to anywhere since the guy hung up after he spoke once in the phone using the foreign language. But when he got back home, his wife decided to confess. She's not who he knew him as, she's not from here. And by here, she does not mean Korea. She means Earth. She's an alien. Out of all the stories so far, this is the most short story, and as a result, it feels the most complete as a story. The ending is heartbreaking because he's just an ordinary husband that is trying his best in the most extraordinary circumstances. Some would say he's enough. I give this a 3.75. We move on to Maria Gratia Plena, which apparently from what I've tried to look up means Maria full of grace. This one is a doozy. It's a sci-fi where you can view the memory of other people, but their memory are a bit unreliable for anything because the memory that we tap into doesn't differentiate between reality and fantasy. In this world, we follow our main character that's helping the police go through the memory of a criminal that's in a coma. We go back and forth between the memory of the woman with a bionic arm breaking into people's home and going through their safe or getting into a shootout with a cop, and our main character that is trying to interpret her memory and deliver them to the detective working on the case. I don't know how the author managed to put short stories into short story, but it works perfectly. It felt like reading an anthology series, an episodic series where every episode did not always connect with each other, but in those episodes there's a larger narrative being told. And if you've played To the Moon by Kangao, you know that what awaits you in a story about exploring someone's memory is almost always a profoundly sad experience. It's another story with the potential to be explored further, just like To the Moon eventually becomes a trilogy. I give this a 4.25. Then we move to the title of the book, Your Utopia. Your Utopia is set in a world where humans has abandoned Earth and took away the generators with them to space. So the only inhabitants left are robots that can self-charge themselves with solar power or other means. Our main character is a robot whose battery has started draining. He was going around as usual looking for spare parts for his body when he met a robot that can only say, "Your Utopia is on a scale of 1 to 10. He called the robot 314, and they went on a journey in an empty Earth. I love stories about Earth that has become abandoned by humans. One of my Doraemon favorite stories is when the group went to a mirror world where everything is backward and it's really empty. And of course, Wall-E is one of my favorite Pixar stories. Out of all the story, Your Utopia is one that I hope can get adapted into a game because I think it can become a great survival type of game like Don't Starve. There's even some action scene in the story. I give this 4.5. Then we move on to A Song for Slate, which takes the point of view of smart home AI on an elevator building that is confused because the new resident is not connecting her data to the building like usual. Then the AI found out that the new resident had Parkinson. It's one of the most interesting AI stories I've read in recent years. It's giving her the movie starring Joaquin Phoenix, which fell in love with the AI voice of Scarlett Johansson. But it's the opposite, the immortal machine is the one falling in love with the dying human. It's short and surprisingly touching. I give this a 4.25. Then we move to the penultimate story, Slate, which is a very short story about deforestation, but from the point of view of the trees. It's a bit trippy since the trees are humanoid and talks with normal human language. The oak, which is the main characters, and the pine, which becomes the human representative, makes me want to continue playing the new Starty update instead of reading. I give this a 3. Then we move to the last story, To Meet Her, which follows a 120 years old woman in a world where the average lifespan has been raised to 150, and even in our world where our average lifespan has been raised to 70 to 80, but the world is not built properly to handle people living to that age. And this story imagines what happened when all of our corrupt politicians live that long. It's quite something. I give this a 3.25. That's the kind of story that you can expect from this book. It's so different from Curse Bunny. If Curse Bunny is more magical realism, then this one has more science fiction to it. A lot of the horror element in the story still carries that existential type of dread and uncanny valley, but a lot of them are implemented more subtly and more cleaner, which is great because that means that's how much better she has gotten at writing. I think Bora Chung also have two full-length novels that is still being translated by Anden Her and supposed to come out next year or sometime, and I'm happy for that. For this book, I give this a 4. What do you think? Let me know if I miss anything, so leave your thoughts in the comment below and subscribe to the channel. That's about it. See ya.